Moran coming in here now. Niall Moran, of course, former Limerick hurler and coach, and I suppose all around a great lad. How's Niall? You well?
Great lad, yeah. We're tired lads there today now. There won't be a whole pile of work done around this neck of the woods. I don't see there be any work done in a lot of counties today. Kind of a national bank holiday for our national game, maybe.
It was something else, wasn't it, Niall? Like yesterday was just unbelievable.
I would safely say I think it was one of the greatest days of hurling of all time. Like we were trying to take on board what was going on above in Leinster. We were trying to watch the first half of the car of the Galway Dublin game. We were trying to get into the pub to watch the second half. And if you saw Limerick, like the scenes on the Ennis Road coming down there yesterday, lads, it was just magical. We actually, just to see, like, there's something about Cork in Munster Championship. Like, you need Cork going well because the crowds of people that they bring, and obviously Limerick brought a huge crowd. There wasn't a drink to be got, warm cans of cider, it was all it was to be got. And you were looking to get one after the match. Like Hermitage Green were playing there at 2:30 in Limerick, and there was nobody watching them. Ordinarily, they'd sell out 30,000 people. Nobody wanted to watch them. We were more worried about what was going on in Music Park, Westmeath, and Antrim, and it was credible. We never had Sky Sports growing up because we didn't have, I don't know, maybe our parents didn't want us watching whatever could be on the foreign channels late at night, but Jesus, it was just felt like one of those Sky Sports final day of the Premiership job. Like it was class, and yeah, it won't be old pile done, not a lot done yet.
And like as the match was going on, like what was the atmosphere like in the Gaelic grounds?
It was incredible, and I know I had referenced it there. Like last Sunday, inside the last 15 minutes of Tip and Limerick, it was just the place was lifting. It was like the Coliseum, and there again yesterday, like when the Rebels got going and the Rebel roar went up off the city and terrace or whatever else. Like it was just it was incredible. It was just incredible. It's like I can't articulate it. It's sometimes you forget how much it's part of your soul and how much it's been a part of our lives, how much it's a part of our everyday relationships. As in, like you go to a game yesterday and it's your people. And I know it's cliched and I know there's ads to that effect, but it means everything. And to see the pride in people and like people who have enough of problems going on in their lives and they're coming out 10 foot tall. You see generations of you see sons bringing their parents who are in their 80s to the matches. You see parents bringing their children who are going to their very first game, and there's that intrinsic link, and there is nothing like it. There's honestly nothing like it. And if I have one criticism, I'm so sad that as of yesterday you have there's 4 of the strong hurling counties straight away, of 6 of the strong hurling counties out of the championship, and I honestly question why we need to have this championship so close together. And I know again that's been cliched, but I'm coming from a different perspective, even as a club, a guy who's just probably coming off the club carousel as a player, maybe doing a little bit of coaching this year. It's a COD, like this split season at club level, it's these couple of months are dead months. And I know they'll articulate the argument that it's great for the club player. It's not great for the club player because I see lads who are of college going age are going away to the States and things like that. But look, that's a conversation for another day. It was just a magical day, and I'm just kind of sad that we're probably only have 4 or 5 more of them as it goes along. But yeah, incredible.
Michael?
Just a quick one on that. So Cork are gone out of the Munster Championship, Niall, having won a game, drawn 1 game and lost 2 games by a point. Like that's the margins. Like it's unbelievable, really, isn't it?
It's gone down the home straight last minute. One slip of a ball, one mistake. Like you could look at micro moments in the game, like as in a refereeing decision, and straight away it costs you. Yes, it costs you your place in an All-Ireland quarter-final, but it costs the development of the game in a county. That's the bigger issue here, boys. Like as in, I take it yesterday. Okay, let's just say for argument's sake, Limerick did lose yesterday, and I'm taking it from our own perspective. Like Munster won the rugby here on Saturday. Like rugby is still here in Limerick. It's a huge sport. There is always going to be competition. You go to a place like Cork, they have competition from rugby, they have competition from soccer. As of now, those kids are not going to see their team play until next February. That's the bones of 8-9 months. Do you know what I mean? And that is lunacy in terms of the bigger development of the game. And whilst days like today are brilliant, in a kid's mind, come next Wednesday or Thursday, they'd have forgotten about it, and it's a case of what's going to be in vogue. And like the greater development of the game, I think, lads, may be compromised by this. And when I say the greater development, I even think at club level, and again, I'm going back to it, there's a passiveness comes in because of the inactivity for that period of time. And the same goes for intercounty, that supporters and people who follow it, they become passive about it when it's not on the screens. you know what I mean? So, yeah, I really look how I just think even spread out the championship. The format is perfect, but just spread it out a little bit more, because some people are making the argument there in today's media that the two Joe McDonagh teams, and I'm not being disingenuous, most definitely not, especially when I'm an athlete man in studio, but like the Joe McDonagh teams have operated at a completely different level, are now still in the championship at the expense of, you could argue Cork. So is there, do you know what I mean? I suppose what am I trying to get at the argument? If you left the fourth place Munster and Leinster into it, are you kind of, do you know what I mean? Are you rewarding their ability not to win the games? You are. So maybe just spread out the championship. But look, it was just incredible, man.
Who were the men who decided the game between Limerick and Cork, as far as you're concerned, Niall? And just for people who were hiding under a rock, it finished Limerick 325, Cork 130, 1 point in it.
Well, if you're to listen to the Sunday game last night, I watched it at 2:30 this morning, lads. I came home and
good man, that's the job.
I'm going to blame, we had a lot of communions here, but no, like I said, nights like that are to be savoured inside Limerick. I actually came home, and if you're to listen to the Sunday game, I was, oh Jesus, lads, I was flabbergasted. And it's amazing, like, it does frame your opinion. And if you listen to Sunday game, it was James Owens who decided it, through his marginal calls, whatever else. Like, Limerick scored 2 points from frees. Cork scored 13 points from frees. Do you know what I mean? As in, so a part of me is there, people are talking about the referee. People who decided Burns. Burns was massive plays, made massive plays there after half-time. Really, really crucial plays. From a Limerick perspective, he was incredible. I think he probably was a standout in that side of it. Look, do you know what? As in, I suppose when you love the game, right? And I love the game. The one word that stood out to me above all the games yesterday was just resilience. All right. And I know he spoke there about Wexford, like the passion and the resilience of Wexford. It's like 1798 all over again. They came and they stood firm. You had the resilience of Waterford. Do you know what I mean? They were being slaughtered. Like, it was the bet of the week there. There were evens at an 8-point handicap. They were being slaughtered. Like, hold up a second, lads. The margins are tiny. And in Limerick's game yesterday, I would say that the resilience of Cork. Like, when have you seen Cork come back in recent years of games where the game was completely gone away from them? They were 4 points down twice, came back to a point. They went 7 points down, came back to a point. Cork are back. The only difference is they just need a couple of more players. And when I say they're back, I mean there's spirit back in Cork. All right? They might be like the Cork of the 80s who were totally dominating, but there's spirit back. And look, the 20s final is on next Sunday. They've shown resilience in all those games. I've watched them 2-3 times in person. They've shown resilience. They've gone back to traditional hurling. And if I'm to pick a Limerick man, I'm going to say Garrod Hegarty, because again, we've all played sport at a level whereby when things are going against you for that length of time, and you're like, he's getting some grief, lads. He's getting grief off the pitch. He's getting phenomenal grief on the pitch from opposition. And I'm telling you, he's getting grief off referees because he is getting nothing. And again, I'm not trying to, again, maybe it sounds as if I'm kind of standing up for my own, but this guy is getting cleaved off the ball. It happened again in Tipperary match. It happened again yesterday. He cannot win a free for love nor money. And that's in my head as an injustice. But yet, despite it all, he was so resilient. He played himself through it. And do you know what? That's why we idolise our local players, because do you know what? There's resilience sometimes needed in life, and it's in short supply sometimes in the modern generation. And I tell you one thing, when you look at what went on yesterday, that characteristic alone, that's why these players are kind of, they influence society in the best way possible, more than any social media influencer or whatever else. That's real life influencing. And that to me was a standout, just that resilience.
Just talk to me briefly, Niall, about Garrod. Like, I think at the moment, if Garrod touches anybody, he's nearly blown for a free against them. And can you just talk to me quickly about even, the grief that he's getting locally in Limerick and rumours and various things swirling around in previous weeks?
Yeah, would you believe it, Mike? Maybe I'm living under a rock, and maybe that's kind of maybe farming and stuff. But I actually hadn't heard a lot of these so-called rumours. And
you and John Kiley both, he hadn't heard as well, apparently.
I honestly actually hadn't heard of it. And do you know what? The amazing thing about some of these is that they're coming from neighbouring counties. Do you know what I mean? There's
who you might be playing the Munster final now, and who your brother might be coaching.
Well, I can't comment on the Clare side, but it's actually coming out closer to the Tip game. I hadn't.
Hold on, we hadn't heard those rumours.
So, do you know what I mean? The man there on the other side of the square, I mean, look, he's sporting new colours today, but look, yeah. Well, look, Les, it was look again. There's like he's a teacher. He's a pillar of society. You know what I mean? He's good people around him. Yeah, he doesn't endear himself at times. Okay, just maybe that's a byproduct sometimes. But no, man. Like these guys they're really healthy, clean living people, and they've been those rumors are rumors. Like
Well, the tipsters nearly got what they were, nearly got more than they bargained for yesterday. They nearly ended up out of the championship.
Yeah, it was. But you know what? I actually, it's just something. And again, it's easy to be wise when the deed is done. But I didn't think Waterford would win it, but I thought they'd be fair close yesterday. And for one kind of, if you're to look at a reference point, like we have to look at that Clare Limerick Munster final as a reference point. That was the first time that a team probably at that point had gotten up to Limerick's level. All right, and I think for that Clare team, it's created a new baseline. It's like going to the next step of a video game or next step of your Everest, whatever. That became their new baseline, which is why Clare are a far better team for it this year. And I think in Tipperary's case, like that's a very fresh Tipperary team in the main. I think they went to a place that they'd never been to before last Sunday. And I think if you're to use the Clare game as a reference point, it took Clare 10, 12 days to physically get over. Like even anecdotally talking to some of the boys who were playing that, they said it was like being in a car crash, not being sore. They said it was like being in a car crash. Do you know what I mean? So like I would imagine that there was probably tip players who were carrying fatigue in their bodies yesterday. And that's not to mention then the kind of mental, I won't say weakness, but you're set up for a fall. And then you have a team coming who are fresh and who have nothing to lose. So I don't think, I wouldn't be as, again, look, I'm only going on the clips of it, but I wouldn't be condemning Tip now. And I think Tip have a nice little route in. They can end up in All-Ireland semi-final very quickly with lessons learned, which for a young team, that's invaluable. Like it's like, I think a Tip's case, it's like having 2 seasons in one in championship terms, the way it's going to work out.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would have to look at the way things have worked out for Tipperary and say, like, fair enough, you can sort of twist any little thing to suit you if you want, but if Tipperary had to go and play Clare in 2 weeks' time, that'd be another bruising game. And, like, you lost Cathal Barrett and Jake Morris to the game, which was played yesterday. So that's taken the 2 fastest players out of your team. And no surprise, along with what you're saying, it felt like a car crash type thing, that Tipperary would be fairly dead on their feet. Now there's 3 weeks to try and get those lads right. You'd be hoping, there's talk of maybe Craig Morgan being back. He's another fast player if he can hit the ground running. I don't think Barry Heffernan's going to be right. But let's call a spade a spade. Tipperary should go to Tullamore and win. I don't think, Bernie, you're really going to question that. So it's 4 weeks until Tipperary will be put in a war. I mean, and I don't want to dismiss Offaly, Bernie. I genuinely don't. But realistically speaking, it should be 4 weeks until Tipperary in war again. So this actually might work out, okay in the long run. Niall, what do you think?
I'm not gonna disagree. As in Tullamore is the easiest place to go at the best of times, and I know Offaly will be licking their wounds again. Look, I agree with you in the sense that like 4 weeks, it's a long time. It's another championship within a championship, and I suppose while all this bloodbath is going on, and it's like it has been going on for the last 5 weeks, I still come back to Kilkenny and Galway coming in the other side, and especially Kilkenny when there's All Irelands like that to be won. Kilkenny tend to be the team that come in the back door, and like, do you know what I mean? There's still a lot of positives to what Kilkenny did yesterday. I know, just look, they're probably a bit porous at the back. But yeah, look, I just think, would you say that is a Munster medal, the way this year's championship gone so far, does it turn out to be more valuable than All Ireland? Would Clare take
every year, Niall, every
Come
year.
out of it, will ya?
Every year.
I honestly, Mike, this is the cod of a championship you're playing in there altogether. I was above and Galway there Saturday evening, and I said half of them didn't even know they had a match on the Sunday. Like there's a total, like it's totally different. Again, it's like I don't know how you'd articulate it, but like this thing is a religion down here. Like it's a rite of passage. It's, do you know what I mean? And yeah, we love going to Croke Park because we get the train up to Dublin, or do you know what I mean? It's nice to stop in Junction 14 and get a snack box. But like there is nothing to us. Like there was a scene coming down the Ennis Road yesterday, and no different to going over the hill in Thurles. Going down to La Bombonera below in Ennis last weekend. Do you know what I mean? Like, man, it's incredible, like what's happening. But again, to our detriment, we've discovered all over the years with the Munster champions, like, and that's even going back to the old system where there was less games. They paid the price for Munster championships down the road, like, you know. So maybe if we played the All Ireland first and the Munster championship, probably where the GA would need to get it right, and it might solve that issue with Cork.
Can I just ask? And I'm not even going to come back on that. We've had it.
That's because you have no comeback.
We've G'd up Leinster well before this. I think if you listen to anyone down in Wexford Park yesterday, or Tom Dempsey or any of the lads, you'd realise that the passion is there. And don't tell me that passion doesn't ooze out in nearly every person going around Kilkenny as well. That's only naming two.
We have him on the run, Niall.
But quickly, Niall, I do want to ask you how well conditioned are Limerick? Like, if you look at Clare, were not the same team after the Munster final last year for the rest of the year. Tipperary were a shell of themselves yesterday. Kilkenny were even a shell of themselves in the 2019 All-Ireland final, having beaten Limerick. And yet, week on week, Limerick are the same team, despite all these wars that are thrown up against them. It seems to have a detrimental effect on every team they play, but they just seem to rock on. And it's the same Limerick, no matter whether they played last week, this week, and next week. It's unbelievable, really.
Jeez, Mike, the narrative can really swing in 24 hours. If I was here with you yesterday, we were saying that Limerick were tired and teams were matching Limerick. Look, they're specimens, but I definitely think the teams have caught up they're nearly coming close on them with physicality, right? I definitely think it has taken 2 or 3 years. Limerick probably stole a march with a generational group of massive men. And I'm not going to just say this is down to everything that Limerick doing underage and blah, blah, blah. Limerick came up with generation, like the size of Byrne, the half back line, half forward line. Look, it's been well documented. So yes, they're extremely, they're extremely well conditioned, but teams physically have gotten to their pitch. Teams tactically have gotten to their pitch. All right, so like I wouldn't. Again, it's just probably playing physically and tactically. Physically, you can get to that pitch. All right, you can do the work. You can bulk up. You can put on the timber. All right, aerobically, you can eventually get up to it, but it's not until you're thrust into it. All right, and again, and you can go with me on this one. When you go back to the old Kilkenny team, it was like that playing the old Kilkenny team. You thought you were fit, you thought you were good, you thought you had all these things done, and then you rocked on, and it just they belittled you in terms of how strong they were. All right, and I suppose the key difference to those elite teams and the teams coming, like Limerick are operating at that level. That is their base level, a la what the All Black base level is. All right, so the problem is for teams that are chasing that, they're yo-yoing up and down, trying to get to that level. And I suppose it takes 3 or 4 years of those teams consistently being at that level to get to it. So I would honestly say at the moment that really competitive advantage that they would have had in previous seasons, I think that has leveled out, which is why yesterday, and again, if we go back to it, it's when Limerick went long yesterday, Limerick had the artillery to go along. Like Limerick, over the last few years, it's not that you'd have to say that they were king of the skies, because they didn't play a game that necessitated being king of the skies. Their game revolved around moving the ball through the middle third, whatever else. But yesterday, Limerick owned the skies in the second half. And when Limerick went long, traditional side into Aaron, there was rack and ruin there. So, look, yeah, physically they are very strong. But I just think if they can just tweak it a little bit more the way they did yesterday, tactically go a little bit more direct, I think they now come with a whole new arrow, like, you know.
Just as well as that, Niall, like there's a cohort of warriors, I would say, particularly 5 or 6 players there that are really kind of keeping the show on the road. Like it's just this unwillingness to be beaten, almost a defiance, almost.
The word resilience. There's that word resilience there, Mike. It's just, look, like the way again, it's the people there. All right, it's the people they are. It's the characteristics they have. Like, even when things start to slip there, nothing gets out of the camp. It shouldn't get out of the camp. Nothing gets out of the camp. They have a loyalty, an innateness, a love, a bond, a respect for themselves. All right, and again, that transpires in everything to do off the pitch. And by God, it transpires on the pitch. And look, there's a warmth in how they. Look, I'm going to tell you, as a county, they have totally changed the complexion of how we view ourselves. The pride in which we take in our city, our county, what we have, like that comes from them, and they bring that. I suppose that word comes back to that respect and that resilience. And yeah, come here to me. It's like everything. Keano isn't in the best of form. All right, they adore him, and you see Burnsy there after the match, and he gives a couple of words. Keano went on, made a couple of small plays, a touch, a flick. That meant the world to them. Keano didn't have to go and score 5 points from play to get the respect of his teammates. It was that, you know what, when things were going against the grain, our most charismatic hurler, he put his shoulder to the wheel, he made a hook, he got his arse in the way, he kicked it. That's just, you know what, again, it's like this phrase, just something extraordinary in the ordinary, and that is what I come back to them. Like they're just extraordinary and they are so ordinary. Like.
Just a word on Galan's cuteness, Niall. Like, to me, he bought the penalty. To me, he bought it. He made James Owens make a decision, and it's funny. About 30 seconds before that, he actually got caught for holding the hurl. To me, he did the exact same thing, but he made the referee make a decision in that instance.
I think the referee made a decision.
Come on, he died. I think he's brilliant. He was unreal.
He didn't dive. He didn't
simulated.
dive.
Whatever way you want to put it. I think he's unbelievable, but he simulated. Come on.
Lads, I don't know. I think there was a lot more going on than that. And again, lads, look, I'm going to be cascaded. Sure, Limerick can watch their own, but again, like our narrative is sold on what we see a lot of times in the Sunday game, all right? And if they had more time and they gave a different prognosis of it, there's things going on where lads have been, do you know what I mean? They've been pulled and dragged off the ball. Yeah, there was two of them at it. Yeah, there was, but he ended up in the ground. Lads, Sean O'Donoghue put himself in a position whereby it was a call had to be made, and Gillan put Sean O'Donoghue in a position where, and come here to me, is that not gamesmanship? Do you know what I mean? We go back to even, we were talking about rugby there earlier on. Munster played Leicester in a Heineken Cup final back in whatever it was, odd 4, odd 5, and Neil back the hand of God. You do what you do to win. And do you know what? I wouldn't be apologising if I was Aaron Gillan. And I also would say in real time, I would have thought it was a penalty, and that's in real time, I would have thought that. So, again, nobody picked up on the free count going the other way. But look, that's a byproduct of being successful. Do you know what I mean? I just harshed on James Owens yesterday. I thought he was poor, and that's been. I thought he was poor in a lot of what he pulled, and more so whatever about what he pulled, what he didn't pull. But look, how could you referee a game like that? And it's split moment decisions. So
no, it's because everybody hates you now, Niall. Everybody hates you now. They loved you in 2018. Now they're after you.
You're trying to get in our heads there, lads. You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to get your heads. So, like, you want the kind of the demons to come out, the little Jake in our head to come out and upset us and throw us. And I tell you, it would have worked very quickly in old money here. Time on the part. Trust me. So we're kind of getting up on the shoulders of others here in terms of being brave. I can't say it's on the shoulders of what we did or what I did, but it's kind of sitting on the shoulders of giants we are at the moment. So we like the view where we are sitting on the shoulders. But again, lads, look. It's look, people talk as well about like Limerick 4 in a row, Limerick 5 in a row. Like Kilkenny never had to go through the volume of these kind of games. I'm not saying they didn't go through these games. I'm not saying that they weren't brilliant, but just the repetitive volume of these games. Like you're now going into game number 5 of what could ultimately be either a 7, 8, 9 game championship, with every game being an All-Ireland final. So. I'm watching Kilkenny from a distance. I just have this innate sense that Kilkenny are going to get it right at the right time. They found Tom Phelan, another good player, David Blanchfield, and I know they were beaten yesterday. So now Derek Ling is a stick to beat them with. They'll become a momentum there in 4 weeks' time.
What about Cathal O'Neill? And like he scored a goal yesterday, and it was just that little bit of patience once the ball was popped to him that he didn't allow himself to get hooked. He took that extra touch and popped it in. And obviously, he'd scored 5 against Tipperary last week as well. So as much as like the narrative is that Limerick are going to the well with the same players time after time after time, he's really kind of come of age now. Yeah,
he got a great goal. And probably struggled a little bit yesterday now. He found yesterday a little bit tougher going, but he stayed working at it. And even a small thing like the ball for the penalty, like that came off Cathal. He was still getting up. He was still working. And like, do you know what? I suppose therein lies the development of players. All right, Cathal O'Neill is probably one of the most prodigious underage talents we've had in a generation. It took him 2 or 3 years to get in there, and the nature of his game was, I won't say it was always about finishing, but the nature of his game is transition, whereby he's bought into a system whereby he's working his ass off, he's getting back. He's like, even the pass that he gave that gave away a simple pointer, I think it was Hoggy got it. Darth Skibbon got it, a simple pass. Like he was back in his own 30 yards. Like that would have been, I won't say unheard of, but that's been coached into him. So, yeah, look, there is players coming. Like, could Colin Coughlin have given a little bit more yesterday? Yeah, Adam English, Shane O'Brien. There is guys coming, but again, John Kiley has his tried and tested, and do you know what I mean? I suppose they haven't let him down. He hasn't let them down, and that's another thing as well, lads. I suppose, like, do you know what I mean? It's so easy to come on these shows and Limerick need to switch, and Limerick need to X, Y, and Z. Like, would I have started to grow at Haggerty yesterday? No, because and I just said he may have just needed to be dropped yesterday. But John Kiley did start him, and John Kiley got the twist out of him that might have ultimately been the difference in winning the game. And that's all kudos to the manager, as well as, like, there's a lot been said about Paul Kinnerk's role as a coach. The manager obviously has to stand over these, and like that's where John Kiley has his loyalty and his innate smartness has come to it. So yeah, yes, there is new guys and there is guys coming in John still recognises that when you go to war, you need those 5 or 6 guys that you spoke about. So, like a word here as well, lads, for Cork. All right, and again, they really, really impressed me in terms of the manliness, their resilience. Like you know what I mean, you have Hoggy and Shamey Harnedy. These boys are a long time on the road, lads. They're the 2 top performers in scorching heat. They defied everything that goes with it. Do you know what I mean? So I just think, look, Cork, chances are they've a handy game, the 20s final there, and at the
Good man.
coming to a 20s final, you know what I mean? They'll get a couple more out of them. And what I really like about Cork is that they're kind of gone back to old school a little bit. They've gone a lot more direct in how they're playing, and they're actually a lot more appealing team to watch. And I just think with 1 or 2 more players, I know Alan Connolly didn't feature a whole pile this year. I'm not quite sure why. Was he injured or whatever?
Injured, yeah.
Mark Coleman.
Mark Coleman. So, like, you start throwing in a couple of players, lads, because ultimately it's new blood makes the key difference when you have your setup right, and Cork's setup is right now, and as is Tips. And that's why, again, the achievement when whoever wins the Munster final in 2 weeks' time. Do you know what I mean? I don't know, maybe it's, again, cliched, but has there ever been a Munster Championship as competitive a side as this? It's been the best of the round robin series, and the round robin series has superseded that and that went before it. So, to me, this Munster medal is worth more than anyone has ever been worth.
Yeah, it's been a bloodbath so far. But again, like back to Cork, like they came from well behind to push teams on different days. The win against Watford was the only exception to that, but they came well behind to push Tipperary all the way to the draw, came well behind, 8 points behind on Clare, came well behind, 7 or 8 points behind here, and only lost by a point. Like Patrick Horgan played 80 minutes last week. So did Seamus Hardy, if we include extra time. I didn't think that they'd be able to perform like this. 1-3 from play and 11 frees, Niall. That's some going for a man of 35. And like, will we see him again next year? Why wouldn't we?
Why wouldn't we see him, man? The only people who write him off are people like us. And do you know what I mean? As in, one thing you always say about these older players is never put a finish line in front of you. And maybe that was the criticism that you'd have had sometimes of lads finishing before their time. Like, just because you've won bad game in your 30s, everyone has to have a narrative. You're written off. And I also think, right, is this now the byproduct of, do you know what I mean, probably a full-on decade of proper conditioning? Whereby, like, the key there for these lads is they haven't picked up major injuries. I can never remember Hoggy being badly injured or anything like that, in that sense. And I think once you're on the hamster wheel, as long as you don't get off it at any point, you'll stay hurling. Your longevity will be there for all to see. The thing probably that, as well as injury, I suppose, obviously the thing that would curtail the likes of these guys' careers is what they want to do maybe in family life, what they want to do in work life. But again, like, Hoggy is still there looking for that elusive All-Ireland medal. And do you know what? Does that All-Ireland medal, is that really going to copper fasten his status? Is that really going to change who he was, whether he gets it or whether he doesn't get it? Like, do you know what I mean? Generations of opposition players have idolised him. Generations of young kids in Cork have idolised him. He's respected by all. Whether he has no All-Ireland medal or 10 All-Ireland medals, I don't think that's ever going to change it. So, yeah, I'd love to see him there again next year for what he brings. And look, how many guys, when was the last fella who pulled the ball from that distance to the back of the net with such power? Do you know what I mean? It's he has all the skills of the game, and he's a legend, and he's a Cork legend. Whether he's, do you know what, would it nearly make him a bigger legend if he didn't have an All-Ireland medal? Sometimes that can nearly be the case when you're creating it in years to come, like, you know.
Yeah, Catnap says here, here, Shane patronising Cork now, as if they hadn't enough pain to deal with today.
Yeah, no, I'd echo what Niall said. I have to say, I've definitely questioned the spine maybe in Cork in recent years, and whether they, would really get their fingers dirty when push came to shove in big championship games. And by God, did they in a couple of, like, the last 3 games, they got down and dirty. And I think, I agree with Niall as well. They won't play for 9 months, which is not ideal, I'd say, for Pat Ryan, and not ideal for that squad. But I definitely think there's something brewing there. I put it to you this way: if Cork had won by a point yesterday, they realistically could have went on and won the All-Ireland. No doubt in my mind, they realistically could have done that. But those are the fine margins. But I definitely think there's something brewing. They just look a little bit different under Pat Ryan.
Niall, do you think Cian Lynch can get his form back this year? Like, I think he's the best player in the country when he's fully right, but is it like, so we had Leo O'Connor on last week and he was saying maybe he put on too much muscle this year. Other people talking about maybe the injury toll, but like, can he get back to himself before the season is out?
I suppose, look, physically he's obviously, his shape, obviously he was incredible, Nick, and he looks very, very strong. just like, again, there was times when he did really, really good things, and I just think he's playing himself through that form. Yeah, of course he can, because he's greatness personified, all right, and he is greatness personified, and like, I just think it's going to take a little bit of time, but now it's like all he needs to do is get one good game behind him. Do you know what I mean? And I probably, if I was to be critical of the use of Keane in Tipperary game, was I had no issue with him starting even, and he picked up his position in the inside line, but just let him there for a little bit and settle. Like, do you know what I mean? When you're not going well, you need to be in your familiar position. You need to be just ride it out. And sometimes, and we've all done it when we're over teams, you're trying to get the best out of somebody and you're moving them from pillar to post and they're not settling anywhere, and then they kind of become uncomfortable looking in over the shoulder. So I would have thought in Keane's case, like, even that spell, just leave him at 11 for a while, leave him ride it out, because he's not going to be getting in the way. So I do think that he would get his form back. And look, all you need to do is reference Garrod. There we go again. 24 hours, Keane goes out and lights it up against Clare. And maybe now as well, that the pressure is not that it was always on Keane's shoulders, but it's shifting to other people. Just going back, Michael, there again about Pat Ryan, right? And not being, he just comes across as a really good guy. He's Cork to the core. He's been with all those guys underage. Again, like, you know, you're the vision of your manager. And I suppose when we look around, lads, again, we have situations where we have political parties and they have leaders who are dubious, and we see these people who are designed to run our society, and do you know what I mean? You can just countless issues of hypocrisy, of do you know what I mean, allegations and everything else. Yet we look at the men who are leading their counties, and I often wonder, are these the men, at times, if we had them leading our country, we'd be a much better country for it. And Pat Ryan strikes me as one of these guys as well. Like, his lads play for him. You know it straight away. Do you know what I mean? And even going back to the Wexford situation, even looking to Lee Chin coming out in defence of Darragh Egan, like any interchange I've ever had with Darragh Egan, just a really, really good guy, really personal guy. And you know, these guys, when they lose a game, they're hung, drawn and quartered. When they win a game, they're the world's best, nothing. But I just think the consistency of character in them, and it's why our game is what it is. It's why, do you know what I mean? It's why every parent would want their child playing hurling.
That's why this channel is called Our Game, because it's our game.
But that's it, lads, isn't it? It's you know what I mean? Like, you go into the we go into school, and I meet lads who are like Paul Flanagan, he'd be involved with Clare, and the crack is there, like, they're living in the middle of it. We're blessed, lads. We're just blessed. And again, like I said to you there, it gives you that sense. Like, you take Offaly, all right, that 20s game there against Wexford, even obviously disappointment on Saturday, but like, man, the pride is back in that county as well. Like, do you know what I mean? For a county who prided itself on being so small, being a dual county, All Ireland winners in both. Again, look, robbed us from All Ireland in '94, but look, we've gotten over that. Like, I mean,
oh yeah, clearly.
that's a couple of refereeing decisions there too. But do you know what I mean? Like, even Offaly has this mojo. Like, and you see kids wearing jerseys, they're going to matches. It's like, that's the best days you'll ever have in your life. And do you know what I mean? As I said, and it's often phrased, like, people die happy when they see their counties win All Ireland. And I've seen it here in recent years where people have gone to their turn and reward, and that picture has been taken. Even a fella showed it to me yesterday of his father. A guy, I teach his young lad inside school, and he came up to thank me. He said it was the best teacher who was ever. So obviously the young lad was lying, but no. But he came over. He'd lost his father the week previous, and he just showed me a picture again from the 2018 All Ireland final. And it's, John, I just said, Jesus, this goes deeper than any game or any commentary on it. Always. And you forget how many people are invested just because they mightn't be involved in a club, or they mightn't be over a team, or they mightn't have whatever else. How much people love, as John McMahon said, they love their county. And it's a huge part of where you are. And you know what? I'm sure there's expats around the world, Michael, who didn't get to see that game in person there, and they're tuning into every podcast because that's their link to home, and that's, do you know what I mean? That's why they just adore GA. And do you know what I mean? It's a wonderful day. And then, I suppose, sunshine, and then to go with it, just where else do you want to be, like?
And Niall, you mentioned Paul Flanagan there, and I'm thinking, who's going to mark Aaron Gillan in the Munster final now? Does Paul Flanagan come into picture, or does David McInerney go in full back, or what do you think Clare will do?
Clare is a big loss there. It's interesting, like, do you know what I mean? I know Shane Lamourie would have come on as well, cornerback, so they have a lot of options, and it'll be interesting to see how they react, because they probably took the nuclear option above in Croke Park last year in terms of replacing John Conlon. And I do think it places a little bit of pressure back on Clare as to who their choice is, because at the edge of the square with a kind of a predator like Galan there, you only get one chance to get it right. And do you know what I mean? There has been a couple of calls where they've kind of paid the price over the last 12 months, and the pressure will be on them to get it right. There's no doubting the way they have their team prepared. There's no doubting the spirit they brought him back. There's no doubting that they brought him back to the top table. But in terms of making a call, there will be huge pressure on that call that they make, because, as I said, there is no room for error. And not that they'll have sleepless nights, but there's a lot of thinking to be done in how they'll approach it. And one thing as well, okay, was Clare have had the best success against Limerick because they pushed up. Cork pushed up yesterday, which was a la the Clare model. They looked vulnerable at the back, and I'm telling you, when Limerick went back and went long, and that's where the reward was there. And I ain't so sure that Clare have anyone. David Mack probably the only one who might be able to contest some bit with Aaron Galan, but David Mack has been superb the last 2 years at wingback, and straight away you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So there will be a lot of sleepless nights there, because you're going to need a big man. And are you going to trust Adam Hogan? Brilliant hurler, super prospect, but he's only 19 years of age. Are you going to ask him to take on that role? Look, who knows? That's the call, and that's going to be in the Clare's management's eyes. And I just think just confirm it as well that the Clare Tip Monster final is off. I just think there was around that where was it going to take place? It's actually off. So
we were so busy trying to figure out the venue, we had no time to hurl.
just on no, Shane, whatever about you giving out to me. I have cousins, I have a lot of relations in Tip, and they won't be thanking me for that. They said we were on the receiving end of enough of beatings from them too, so I'll keep quiet after that.
Is there any county that people love to see down a bit more than Tipperary? Like, it's only a pity, Niall, that you didn't let Cork get another score and Tipperary be left with their tails between their legs this morning.
Yeah, I don't know. It is, look, again we're our neighbours. Thou shalt not slate our neighbours. I think that was the 11th commandment that Moses. So I have a couple of them cutting silage here beside me, so I better wait till the silage is in and picked up before we start slating.
I know Owen Kelly being your cousin and all involved with Waterford. Would you have been chatting to him at all during the season and obviously leading into that game?
Come across each other with family occasions, whatever else. I don't really go there, Shane. And no different to friends, like, you know, as in, it's the last thing you want to be talking about. And to be honest, the only time you'd be talking to him is to find out how Mullinahone are getting on. And obviously Owen is involved at Waterford, but Jesus, man, if there's a better club person in the country than Owen Kelly, he's still tagged out senior up. He's played a league game there recently, I think, against Upperchurch. I saw him tagged out for it. He's over his own young lad Conal, a mighty prospect. He's Conal's 11 or 12. It's actually funny now, I'm not sure what time, but I was at a community games under 11 final here in UL there last year, and Mullinahone were playing Port Tumna, and Owen was on the line there from Mullinahone, and man, if you thought he was passionate on the pitch, oh lad, if you saw this like going up and down the line, what it meant to him. And actually Damien Hayes, I don't know, he the son playing there, he was kind of, wasn't directly involved with Port Tumna, and you see him going at it, and so you know what, that's just so look, again, probably getting away from your question. Like, as in, these guys are involved in other counties, but there's nothing like their home club. And I would actually follow the club situation more now in terms of Mullinahone. I know that they've a lot of good prospects coming there at the moment as well. So, yeah, look, it's strange to see him in a Waterford bid, but I actually haven't seen him really, to be honest, because he's kind of kept to the background. So, maybe he's getting a few lessons from Davey to bring forward there in a couple of years' time again to Tip.
Indeed. Michael, anything else to ask Niall? He's been great with his time.
No, the last thing I would say to you, Niall, we had Mark Foley on a couple of weeks ago, and the one thing he kept saying is that he didn't think Limerick were hitting the inside line often enough. And, like, by God, the 3-4 passes outside the pitch are kind of gone now, aren't they? Like, they're getting that lovely diagonal ball in as quick as they can. Doesn't stick the whole time, but they're playing the percentages. They're putting the ball into those areas. Lovely diagonal ball. Darragh O'Donovan, although he got 3 points yesterday, some of the ball he was putting in from potentially, like, shooting areas 80 yards out. Remember Peter Casey giving in a lovely ball as well. They're back playing. I would have said it was a tiny bit individualistic against Tip at times. It was all about the team yesterday.
Yeah, against Tipperary, I suppose it's there to be critical of themselves. It's not me. Is that I suppose there was elements of their decision making, i.e., shot selection, that was poor. And again, I kind of go with Mark, as in, look, the way Limerick played when they were flooding bodies back, it has taken teams a couple of years to kind of go with it. And the thing about it is, okay, traditionally, what we were always told to do in all levels of GA was mind your house. All right, so when you're being dragged out the pitch and forwards are going down, you're going to have a situation where at times against Limerick that teams at 2 guys back. Then you saw the Clare model whereby they pushed up and just went for it. So obviously now that has become, I won't say the modus operandi to beat Limerick, but definitely the modus operandi to compete with Limerick. And straight away, I think Limerick just realised, well, hold up a second now, the space is back there. We have boys inside, and it's just getting that transition of mindset that we don't have to work it all the way methodically. And I won't lie to you, Mike, I've seen it there even with a couple of underage games across the board. There was probably times when, as Limerick, we're very lucky in the sense that everything's been coordinated and we're all playing to the structure of the seniors. But there was times in a couple of underage games where they overplayed the ball, and teams now are so well coached against them at that level. And I just thought that other teams are getting far more success against us by going along on the converse when they're on the attack, and that we didn't go along when we were attacking. And it was actually something that, not being hypercritical, but it was something that I would have taken away from the underage games, that we just needed to kind of go route one a bit more, that it was transitioning back. And I know Shane Dowling referenced it there on the Saturday game about the long ball is back, but it is back in fashion in the sense of you have to have that mix of it. And I do think in Limerick's case, they have that artillery. Seamus Flanagan's a good man in the air. Obviously, Aaron is super in the air. So I do think that there will be a shift to that when we go to play Clare the next day.
And actually interesting, like Tipperary pushing up, trying to make sure that Barry Nash isn't going to dominate the game anymore. It's interesting how his role, like he's not been able to take over games the way he had been now.
He's not, but lads, sure, what did Limerick, like Limerick pulled 111 from midfield back yesterday. I know, okay, there's a penalty thrown into it and a free, but like you're talking about 10 points, so like Limerick are still getting forward in that sense. And yes, he obviously is, the lads, they're pegging him, like look, they're picking up his runs on it. So look, again, the thing has transitioned, but I still can't overemphasize the role of Nicky Quaid. All right, like, do you know what I mean? The nature of his puckouts is like you're still putting them through a pin for lads, you know. And I thought Limerick really ruled the roost in the air in the second half yesterday. I thought the first half, I thought Cork committed more bodies on the breaks. I thought Cork had a lot more success on the breaks. So again, like I just think that the role of Nicky is huge in that. So look, lads, I don't know. It's as I said, it's been an unbelievable. There won't be much work done. There's not much work done today anyway, and definitely won't be much work done for the rest of the day the way things are here. And again, word up as well. I mean, you probably spoke about it. That Carlow Offaly game was just an immense game of hurling as well. And John, you just wonder. As I said, you're kind of half sad that a lot of these games, like we're not even at the 1st of June yet, and a lot of the best hurling of the year is behind us. And as I said, I just, the truncated nature of it, it's too truncated in what it is. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not for the argument that it's super for club hurlers. I think long term, I think over a course of years, I think we might root to regret having such a gap. Do you know what I mean? Such a microwave inter-county season, and to get that kind of a gap of that July month is pretty much a dead month here. That's June, July are pretty much dead here at club level. So I just wonder, maybe it doesn't need to be as truncated, and that we'd have more Sundays like we had yesterday.